We are live in the TCOYD studio at the end of a really fun day. Thank you all for your comments on the chat during the whole day. You of course know Jeremy and I quite well by now, and don't forget that these lectures will be up for the next 2 weeks on the VFairs platform, and then they will be moved to our video vault. You can watch them anytime. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to two of the non-type 1 endocrinologists that are really a solid part of TCOYD. You've seen them on many other conferences in our video vault. Tricia Santos, who is the ultimate endocrinologist, and then there's Schaefer Bader, who also is the youngest of the team, but now is full-time faculty at UCSD, does research with Jeremy. And I think both Tricia and Schaefer are excellent at not only talking to healthcare professionals, but a very, I would say, unusual talent of being able to talk to people living with diabetes.
Yeah, I just want to say hi again, to everybody. And it's so great being here. I mean, all the videos that you guys have been watching today, that's literally taken us months to prepare that. And today is really just a joyful day of us actually enjoying watching them too. The creation we put together, chatting with you guys. And then this is our one time to come on live and answer questions. And again, we're just here in the TCOYD office in sunny San Diego. Glad to have Trish and Schaefer here. So Trish is going to be going through all of your questions. So definitely, submit them, and we'll get to as many as we can. And let's get started.
Well, I wanted to say, though, that after watching the food challenge, we ordered the same exact meal that Jeremy got for me, and 4 of us shared it.
Oh my God.
And all 4 of us are stuffed. And
He's
for
still
dessert,
complaining about food
I just
challenge.
want to show for example.
It was a very small acai bowl. To
Wasn't
be
my,
fair.
I didn't ask for it.
I don't know why you got such a small bowl.
It's not your fault.
I went home and got another one because I was still hungry. Anyway.
You stayed in rain.
Okay, so let's do it.
Okay. So we have a ton of questions already popping into the chat. So I'll try and batch them a little bit, but we'll probably have to jump around a little bit. The first question is, how do you change your alert sounds on the Dexcom G6? So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about alerts and how you use them or how you talk to your patients about them. And then the fact that we can change the sounds, I think a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll start off since that was one of the tips that I gave, one of the better tips. No.
Steve kept texting me that his were the most important tips. I was like,
Well, first of all, I'll summarize briefly. Lowering your upper alert to 150, for example, really gives you an opportunity to do something before you hit 180. That will improve your time in range, your average glucose, and your A1C, your estimated A1C and your real A1C. And I also want to say, for those of you that are worried about alarm fatigue, you can have a separate set of alerts overnight, for example. You can make it wider so you don't get bugged, your spouse doesn't get bugged, your partner, whatever. Now, every CGM is different, but in the Dexcom app, you go right into settings, you go to alerts, and then you pick the alert you're talking about. Let's just say hi. You click on hi, and then you scroll down a little bit, and it says sounds. You click on that, and you got about 20 different sounds, like the slide I showed you during our presentation. And you know what? There's a lot of different ones. It makes a huge difference. Instead of saying, oh, no, I won't use Jeremy's number 7 rule out loud. You'll say, awesome. Now I can look at it. I look at the trend arrow, the other important tip, and you can make a decision what to do.
What about repeat alerts, you guys? Do you want to talk about that? Because I think the repeat alert, sometimes people think it has to be the same for the low and the high, but really it should not. Can you comment on that, Schaefer?
Go for it.
Well, I mean, yeah, a lot of people don't even use the repeat alerts. So, the repeat alerts, we kind of, sometimes we call that the snooze button, but it's going to tell you if you're high, for example, your high alert goes off. It'll only go off one time unless you have the repeat alert turned on, and then you can set, how frequently do you want to know if you're still high, and the question there is like, what are you going to do with that information? So for sure, we I think globally we would recommend for low alerts, a low repeat alert is really important, because if you're low and you want to know that, then you want to treat that, and then you want to know 15 minutes later, are you still low? So if you're going to retreat it or do something about it. For the high alerts, a repeat alert is really useful if you're going to be doing something about it. If you're going to rebolus, when do you want to check back in again? So how long you want to have that repeat alert come back is sort of an individual preference. But I'm curious how you guys handle it.
I was just going to say, I have my repeat high alert set at 2 hours. And that's mostly for like overnight. Like, if I wake up and I'm high and I take some insulin or whatever, I don't want it to just be high all night and not tell me again. So 2 hours is enough time for it to hopefully kind of come back down into range. And on the low side, I think I'd have it like 15 minutes or so. And my like overall message for alerts is that these should be set to a place for you that it's always a call to action. It means now is time to do something, rather than I just want to be annoyed and like nobody just wants to know I'm high, like to be bugged, but I'm high and I need to take insulin. Oh, it's 2 hours later and I'm still high. I should probably take some more and maybe think about changing my pump or whatever it is.
Yeah, really, really good points. And you won't find that in any textbook, the alerts or the trend arrow. I should say something about the rapid rise and rapid fall, since we're on this topic. All of these come factory set off, So I kind of like the rapid rise and rapid fall, because let's just say you're eating an acai bowl and your blood sugar just starts to rapidly climb from 100 to 120. You're still in the desirable range, 70 to 180 or 70 to 150, but you want to know, because when you have 2 arrows up, you better do something. I don't care what it is, but run around the block, give yourself a bolus. You know that it's rising 3 milligrams per deciliter or more. And same on the way down, you might say, okay, I'm not really out of range, but I better get some juice.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say, and then we'll go on to the next topic, is
Hey, I like this stuff.
when there's 2 arrows up, you mentioned it, that means that it's rising by 3 milligrams per deciliter or more per minute. So if that goes on for 10 minutes, that's 30 points that you're higher in that quick, like amount of time. So
Or lower.
or lower when so anyways. All right, next topic.
Well, Steve, you said something that kind of jives with the question here, where you said you better do something about it if it's rising quickly. And one of the questions says, why do I need to move around after eating to get my insulin to work? So maybe you guys could talk a little bit about kind of what things you can do when it feels like it's not working, and what things you can do maybe ahead of time, to make it work better.
Well, I'm going to make this short because I don't want to do all the talking here. These guys are bright. I texted you a picture of a paper I published when I was 33 years old on insulin-mediated glucose uptake. And it was all about how your muscle takes up glucose with insulin, and especially a muscle that's exercising. You talk to anybody with type 1 and you will drop like a rock when you add insulin and exercise together. So Jeremy does a lot of stuff on insulin resistance in type 1s. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, it's just that definitely moving, exercise, that just makes you more insulin sensitive. And you don't necessarily have to move around to get your insulin to work. It's just going to work a lot faster if you're active. The other thing that people don't know about too is heat. Just being outside in the sun, and even if you're just sitting there, sometimes that can make you just like plummet. A reason for that is that can really kind of speed up the absorption of insulin. So being outside in the heat and walking and doing any kind of exercise is like always like a 1-2 punch to make you go low. So especially now in the summer, heat waves, that's something else to be aware of.
Yeah, good thoughts.
But I think it's I think it can be a useful tool, like to just go for a walk.
Totally.
After a big meal or after your kung pao chicken or whatever, because those, like you said, the muscles. That's
orange
where
chicken.
Orange chicken, thanks. Orange chicken. Because the glucose has to go somewhere. So even if you take insulin, that's the whole idea is to shunt that glucose and use it and get rid of it. So that's where it's going. It's going into the muscles, and if you're using your muscles, then it's actually taking up the insulin. So I think that's a good strategy.
Good
Yeah.
question too.
Great question.
I have a question here that I think probably rings true for a lot of people. It says, I always panic when my blood glucose gets very high or low, thinking I'm going to go blind or start losing my limbs. What is the tipping point for the most dire things that can be caused by mismanaging your type 1?
Well,
In other words,
Trish, you can jump in there too.
well, in other words, I think, should people worry if their blood sugar, goes up to 300 one day? Or what are we talking about in terms of how long it has to be high or low to cause problems?
yeah, I think this is a really good question, because I think this is something that everybody struggles with, myself included, that your blood sugar goes high, even if it's like, 250. That's not that uncommon. And especially you're trying to bolus, trying to get it to come down, and it can be lingering there, and you're thinking, gosh, am I doing damage? And my advice there is, it's cliche, but this really is a marathon and not a sprint. It's your overall control, trying to keep your time in range is, above 70%, trying to keep your A1C less than 7. And if you're doing that, you have to celebrate those victories, because that means that you're in a good, healthy place. We all have our highs and we all have our lows, and we try to, diminish those. But what you want to avoid is like the constant like yo-yoing, like I'm high, oh my gosh, like I got to get like this blood sugar down really quickly, take a, what we call a rage bolus, then you go low, and you're just kind of constantly bouncing and reacting to that. So, we all need this information, or I remind myself, take a deep breath, try to get your blood sugar down, in a safe way and move on. But there's no trigger that I would say, if you go over 300 for 15 minutes, there goes your eyesight. It just doesn't work like that. It's more the mental anguish of looking at these numbers and being frustrated with the highs and lows, the literal highs and lows that Steve and I, we still have all the time, even though like we do this for a living.
Yeah, well, I can add to that, on the low side, you definitely want to catch yourself, because you could pass out, you could have a seizure, you could even pass away. Thank goodness it happens extremely rarely. So that's acute. But on the high side, when your question was losing your eyes and your legs, that occurs over years of persistently high blood sugars. I mean, I'm talking about years of blood sugars on average over 200. There's no magic number. That's not, don't hold me to that. But it's not just occasionally high and low. And those, I agree with Jeremy. You just got to take those and say, let's get me back in range, and not worry about losing your limbs or your sight.
I think a little bit more academic way to look at it would be to kind of, when you're looking at your CGM, your time in range, like over time, and trying to kind of see where you're starting at, because it's really that over many, many months and years and decades that you guys are talking about, and this damage can occur over time. Yep. Not with the lows. The lows are more acute. You should, you don't want to be hanging out super low or having deep low blood sugars. Those can be dangerous in the very short term, but your time in range will kind of tell you that. So if you have a CGM, if you don't have a CGM, get one, and then go back and look at that information and try to understand what your time in range means, because that's going to be one of the, probably, as we learn more about it, probably one of the best measures of your risk for having those problems. And not that you should look at your time in range and freak out, but to give you an understanding of how you can actually improve it. Because it's not, did you go high one day for 15 minutes? It's like, are you high 25% of the time, and maybe we can work on getting that a little bit lower.
Yeah, let me just add that not too long ago, all we had was the A1C. The A1C doesn't say anything about highs and lows, and we know if your A1C is around 7, you're going to avoid the complications of diabetes. And we know that if the time in range is above 70, your A1C is going to be around 7 or lower, and you're going to avoid the complications. So we didn't have time in range before. And we didn't even know anything about fluctuations. We just know that your mean average was around 155, around that area. You're pretty darn safe.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on this is that on the inside of my bathroom door, I have this big dent in my door, and I've told this story before, because this was, I don't know, like a while ago that I was looking at my blood sugar. It was just one of those days that I was up, down, like all over the place. And I was in the bathroom, I looked at my phone, it said like, 280 going up. And I literally took my phone and threw it against the wall because I was so mad. And, every time I'm in the bathroom now and I see that dent in the door, I'm kind of reminded of that frustration. So I think to kind of add on to this question is you do your best, you try to keep your blood sugars in range, but the frustration is very real and normal. Again, you just kind of try to move on and continue to do your best.
Well, you graduated from anger management, didn't you?
Yeah, and then
That was before that.
Send him back.
All right, that's really good advice, and I think probably helps put people at ease a little bit. Well, there's a lot of questions in here about automated insulin delivery. So I'm going to throw kind of a bunch of them out at you, and maybe you guys can maybe Schaefer, you can start us off with a summary about kind of what these systems are, and then you guys can comment. So some of the questions are, what are your thoughts on open source closed loop systems? Is it time for me to change over to the Omnipod 5? I'm a loop user. Every time I bolus, my blood sugar goes up a little before it comes down. So kind of lots of questions about different systems here. Schaefer, do you want to start us off?
I guess maybe just a general overview. I mean, we talked about a lot of these today, but closed loop systems, they're all a little bit different. The idea behind them is the same. It's a CGM plus an insulin pump and then some algorithm that ties it together. And as the algorithms and the CGMs and other technology get better, then they've become faster, they become more accurate, they've done a better job at controlling, you know, the blood sugars, the spikes and all those. But they all do things a little bit differently. That being said, when we look at them, you know, on a larger scale, they kind of do the same thing, and the outcomes are very similar. And so, you know, when it comes to questions of like which one to choose, that's a very like sort of personal question. And so it's a good question, but it's not one that, you know, we can answer for you almost. That whether it's Omnipod or you know, the Control IQ, or if you're looping or using any of those, they do a lot of the same stuff now. You know, in general, those systems will control your bolus insulin, your basal insulin, sorry. So it's going to adjust automatically based on what your blood sugar is doing. And then a lot of the systems will now give you a bolus if your blood sugar is going high, but none of them do a great job at if you just don't bolus for a meal and you just are waiting for the closed loop or hybrid closed loop system to do all the work. That they're not there yet. So if you don't bolus for meals, if you had, you know, your acai bowl, you're going to go high for sure. So some of the that's kind of how those work. But in terms of choosing different ones and trying to, you know, understand if it's you know, one pump versus the other, you have to look at sort of the specifics of what they do. I mean, Omnipod is a tubeless pump. That's what's kind of, I think, super unique about it. So if you don't want a tube, I think that's a great option, and it does kind of the similar thing to what the other options do. I mean, you guys have used almost all of these, or in some combination of there, but
yeah, I think you know, if you look at the pumps that we had 5 years ago, we had the Omnipod, we had Tandem, we had Medtronic, and at that time they didn't integrate with CGM at all. They didn't really, you know, do anything. And today we have an Omnipod, Tandem, Medtronic, but they all have this integrated feature with a continuous glucose monitor. So it really does come down to like personal choice. And to answer this like kind of specific question about my blood sugars going up after a meal, I think that's a good one because it's about, you know, expectation setting. That literally everybody, whether they have diabetes or not, you know, including Schaefer and Trish, that after you eat, your blood sugars will go up. So I think if you're striving to have, you know, completely flat blood sugar all the time, that's unrealistic. And I tell people, and it's a joke, but it's also true, the only time your blood sugar is flat is when you're dead. Otherwise, there's always going to be some fluctuations. So what is
very uplifting.
Yeah, well, so we're not aiming to be dead. We're aiming to be, you know, living human beings. So your blood sugar is going to go up after you eat. That's to be expected. You try to, you know, keep in range. And I tell people that if you can, between where you start your meal and what your peak is after eating, if you can keep that under 50 milligrams per deciliter, you're doing a good job. Under 30 is like perfect. Meaning if you start at 180, well, you might go up to 220 or so, and that's still kind of a reasonable expectation. And then hopefully you'll, you know, come down into range. But if you're trying to just be 80 all the time, guess what? You're going to have tons of lows. So it is a balance.
Yeah. And, you know, one thing I'll say about these systems now that, especially, you know, we've had Medtronic for a while, we've had Tandem for a while now, Omnipod's coming around. We as providers are having to learn how to help our patients use these systems. So the one thing I would say about using these systems is you know, you can't always do things the exact same way you used to. So, you know, there are little things that we're learning that are different. Like sometimes you don't need to treat a low, you know, with as much, you know, glucose or candy or whatever you're eating as you used to, because, you know, the pump is also helping treat the low at the same time, right?
There's no more insulin coming.
They've turned off the insulin, so then you're really going to rebound if you overdo it. Or sometimes when you're going into a meal, you know, you used to have kind of a set amount of basal insulin in your system going into a meal, and that was true every single morning, for example. And now every morning people might wake up and they may have kind of a low amount of insulin in the system because the pump's really, you know, dialed down what you need overnight, for example, or something. So there, you know, you should be working with your provider and really kind of paying attention to how these systems are working for you, because you may have to adjust how you do things. On some of the systems, you have to make your carb ratio more aggressive. So those types of things, just beware that it's not exactly how we used to treat things.
And I think a lot of it too is like, which goes with what you're saying, but also the expectations is like trying to, as these systems become smarter and do more, like then we have to ask people wearing them to do less. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit of like releasing the control, and especially if you're someone who's used to really managing your blood sugar and keeping it in a very tight range and giving tons of microboluses and doing that, like the more active you still have to give your boluses and be engaged, if you're over engaged, then it kind of starts to confuse the algorithm. I mean, if you start, if you're trying to trick or outsmart the algorithm by giving, let's say you're a little high, you want to give a bolus, so you put in fake carbs, then the algorithm thinks you ate carbs, but it just messes it up. So, so it's kind of interesting just to see how this is like the psychology of using the pumps
So true.
mixed with the technology. So a little bit of it is also just being aware that there's, they're not going to be perfect, but they work very well, and kind of letting them work, I guess.
Yeah, really good comments. I'll just make a couple extras. First of all, it's important for all you folks on MDI users. I have patients using shots, and they have their CGM, and many of them have better control than my patients on hybrid closed loop, because you can still mess up. And I have people on what we call dumb pumps, pumps that don't communicate with the CGM. They do extremely well. So you have to find the system that works for you. But these hybrid closed loop systems, I can tell you that I do think it's the wave of the future. And as Schaefer said, eventually they'll be able to handle carb meals. Right now they just don't. But they make decisions for you when you're not even thinking about your diabetes. And a lot of times those decisions are way better than you would make yourself, to be quite frank. And I think, Tricia, you never really thought of this, but you're right about insulin on board from the automatic delivery makes the decisions the person using that system a little bit different. And I've bolused with fake carbs. If you don't know what that is, I have to watch one of our video on our video vault. And I can tell you a lot of times I get low afterwards because it's already cranking up the basal because I'm high, and I say, hey, that's not enough insulin. But anyway, you learn over time. And so these systems, they're not automatic, perfect control. And I think the settings are important. Your insulin to carb, but especially your insulin sensitivity factor, super important, and almost more important than what your basal rate is. So these are the wave of the future. But for those of you not on these systems, you can do well, and many of you are.
Yeah, and I think, I didn't used to really push many insulin pumps on my patients at all. I push CGM because I think that that's super important, but nowadays I am pushing a little. I mean, of course, I always let the patient decide what to do, and you can do well on any system, but I am pushing these a little more just because I'm seeing how it's making people's lives easier in general. And I think, even if it's just letting them sleep better at night, that goes a long way. And that's probably the best thing that I hear back from people is just sleeping through the night every single night.
And getting that time and range high.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as Schaefer mentioned, when you look at all the clinical trials, in general, when people go onto these types of systems, they improve their time and range by about 10%, which is pretty good. That's on average, just to set expectations.
Yeah. Well, along this line, there's one question here that says, are Lyumjev and Fiasp approved for tandem pumps, or for these hybrid closed loop systems? Can you just review what those two rapid acting insulins are and then how we use them in pumps?
Go for it, Jeremy.
So yeah, Lyumjev and Fiasp, real quick, are kind of like the newest kids on the block in terms of a rapid acting insulin. So Humalog kind of changed a little bit of their structure of or what they add to the insulin basically to make it get absorbed a little bit faster. So Humalog, if you want, kind of evolved to Lyumjev. Of course, you can still get Humalog, but Lyumjev works a little bit faster, meaning it has an onset of action maybe 10 minutes or so quicker. Fiasp is kind of the newer version of Novolog, if you will. So we've had Humalog and Novolog forever. Now they have their slightly faster acting components of Lyumjev and Fiasp, if you can say those names fast. So of course you can use them in pens. These are a great option if people want to just put them in pens. And then you can put them in pumps. But there is some issue now with the tandem pump specifically, right?
With Fiasp.
With Fiasp.
Yeah.
That you're not, supposed to, I
Right.
guess, use that in that
Right.
in that pump. There was some issues, at least anecdotally, we've heard about these getting a little, like the tubing getting a little bit clogged and not working as well. So to be honest, I like to use them more in people that are just using MDI. People can try them in their pumps if they want. But again, it might just help slightly, reducing peaks of highs. But overall expectations are not a huge change compared to Humalog and Novolog.
Yeah, and some people notice that with Lyumjev in a pump, it does create some burning in the tissue, which is not uncommon at all. And I agree with Jeremy that the differences aren't tremendous, but some people notice the difference. And if you're on MDI, or if you go back and forth for sure, you want to use one of these faster acting. Tricia, you're probably going to get to it, but when we were talking on one of the lectures, there was a ton of questions about Afrezza during the food challenge. So I'm not sure if we're going to get to that, but now's probably not a bad time.
Bless you.
One question that I saw on there was, well, first of all, a lot of people could not get it. A lot of people said their doctor had no clue, no frickin' clue. Please don't cuss on our website. No, that's okay. And can you take it on top of a hybrid closed loop system or an insulin pump? So I'll let you guys go for the rest of the answers for that.
I'll start real quick. We've done a ton of lectures and talks about Afrezza. There's stuff in the video to watch about, I just talked about Fiasp and Lyumjev that are a little bit faster. Afrezza really is, in my opinion, a completely different category in terms of how rapid on and how rapid off it can be used. It can be difficult to get covered through insurance. That's something that we hear all the time, especially for Medicare patients. My advice there is ask your provider, to prescribe it for you, to try it. Usually there'll be like a local representative in the area of the company that can help get things through insurances. We found, certain pharmacies that we like to use that can help get it approved. So it does take a little bit more legwork. Now, when it comes to the issue of using it on top of pumps, the official answer is that it's not approved to use with these hybrid closed loop systems. That being said, Steve and I use it, and we have a lot of patients that use it in addition to these systems. It can actually get really good results. So there were some comments, for example, when I was eating my acai bowl, when I destroyed Steve earlier in the food challenge. Why I didn't use Afrezza, and that would have been a perfect time to use Afrezza because it works so rapidly. And then I did use it later actually to kind of help turn the tide of that high carb meal. So I was using it obviously in addition to my hybrid closed loop system, and you can get really good results. What I was going to say there is people will say, well, how does it know if am I tricking the system? Well, if you're just inhaling it, for carbs, you don't have to enter the carbs into the system. It becomes a little bit of a wash. So kind of none the wiser. If your blood sugars are high and you want to correct with Afrezza, you just have to be conservative because keeping in mind that the pump's already trying to bring you down. But I think anybody on a hybrid closed loop system will tell you that every once in a while the algorithms just aren't aggressive enough and it can use a little bit of a push. So it's trial and error. When it comes to Afrezza, again, I would just say ask your provider. They generally don't know about it. There's generally some fear and kind of because they don't know how to dose it. So you have to really educate yourself. Ask them, use the local representatives. If you're watching this at the conference right now, the Mankind booth, in the healthcare fair, you can go there. There's usually live representatives there that you can have Zoom calls with and help particularly with these discussions around coverage, insurance, Medicare, all that.
Yeah.
And you can also go to their website, and there's a lot of information for patients on their website as well. I should say one quick thing. You mentioned, Jeremy, about using Afrezza with pumps, and it's not officially approved. You guys have to remember that these pharmaceutical and device companies are under strict scrutiny by the FDA, and in order to get something approved, it takes studies. They have to go to meetings, and it takes years. But one thing we'd like to offer you at TCOYD is really how to use this stuff, whether it's officially approved or not. So don't hold the companies, for what we are saying here. But we try to give you the most practical information, whether it's, they've done official studies or not.
And, I do have quite a few patients who are trying to use Afrezza with these systems. And I think what you said was really good, Jeremy, which is they use it mostly for two reasons. One is if they're eating a really high carb meal or something like an acai bowl that's very challenging to bolus for, and they know it's, going to be a problem. And I like your idea about kind of not entering those carbs so that it doesn't confuse the algorithm, because I just want to bring it back to the algorithm a little bit. That one thing to keep in mind is that, for example, on the Omnipod pump, the way that the algorithm works to kind of get to know you better and better and better with each pod that you're putting on is it looks at your total dose of insulin for the whole day. We call that a total daily dose of insulin from your basal, from your boluses, correction, food, all of it. So if you are never entering carbs into your pump and it's just trying to correct you a bunch of the time, you're not really giving it enough insulin, and it thinks, oh, I don't need that much insulin to help this patient. So really entering those carbs, not during the Afrezza time, but during regular times is so important because it tells that pod, oh, this patient needs a lot more insulin. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to start with, a higher dose of insulin. So Afrezza can confuse the algorithm a little bit, but honestly, if you're using it kind of sporadically, which is how I see most people doing it, I haven't seen it be a problem. I've seen it help people more than hurt.
And a lot of these, almost all these systems work in part to looking at your predicted blood sugar up to an hour in the future. So if you take Afrezza, you don't record it obviously on your system, and your rate of change changes, your system will adapt. And I think it does adapt pretty well. And I just want to say, these hybrid closed loop systems is kind of like your significant other. You got to be honest with them. Tell them everything that you're doing all the time.
But the nice thing about Afrezza is it's very fast on, but it's a very short duration too. So if you bolus, if you have an acai bowl and you take the Afrezza, it's going to do its work, but at, half an hour later, it's pretty much done. And so whatever residual that's left is still, the pump's still going to be working. So in that sense, it makes sense to use it with a pump because the pump can kind of cover that if you're still a little high, but it also gives the pump time to kind of back off if it sees your blood sugars are responding to the Afrezza. By the time the pump really is kind of catching up and the insulin that's coming, that slow insulin that's really coming through the pump, the Afrezza is going to be out of the system already.
So Jeremy, tell us, is there a study going on now looking at this exact issue?
Yeah, they're definitely, I don't know like the full details if they finalized it, but definitely using it in combination and potentially versus hybrid closed loop. So yes, and in pediatrics too, because right now Afrezza is for adults only, but they're doing studies in kids.
I would say for me, the rapid off feature is almost more important than the rapid on. I just don't want that tail around.
Yeah.
Trying to crank down a high blood sugar with sub-Q insulin, you're going to get low later on. So frustrating,
Yeah. All right, let's change gears here a little bit. There's quite a few questions about non-insulin medications for people with type 1 diabetes. So one of them here kind of summarizes it and says, why don't more endos use SGLT2s or GLP-1s or even metformin with their type 1s? Or even the new GIP GLP-1 Mounjaro. So can you comment on this? Mounjaro.
And, Tricia, you go first. You know this stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I'll say is but we've talked a lot about this at TCOYD. We have a lot of talks on this in the video vault as well. But these are the two classes of medications. One's oral, a pill once a day, the SGLT2 inhibitors that make you pee out your glucose. The other class of medications, the GLP-1s, are mostly injectables. Most of them are once a week injections. And both of these actually work to help people with type 1 kind of improve their time in range is what they do. They help people use less insulin. And one of the questions in here said, which people with type 1 are kind of good candidates for these? And I think that's a really important question. And what I'll say is, you don't need these medications to have good control of your diabetes. So absolutely don't need them. Some people kind of want some extra help, and those are the patients that I have on them. And then there's a few new reasons now why we really like to use these medications, and people with type 1 may be thinking about them, and that is for benefit for those who have heart disease and kidney disease, because both of these classes have been shown to help people, the GLP-1s particularly with heart disease, the SGLT2s particularly for people with kidney disease. And so I think that's another really good reason now to start considering them in people with type 1.
Yeah, I'll just make one comment. So I have chronic kidney disease stage 3. That's sort of the range where they did a lot of the studies. And so my nephrologist at UCSD, we both decided that I would take Farxiga, which is one of the two SGLT2 inhibitors that have done most of the studies, and mainly to prevent the progression of diabetic kidney disease. And it's approved by the FDA for people with and without type 2. So I'm in that category. And I would say, Tricia, that if someone had high risk factors for congestive heart failure, that's another preventative idea. And also when one of the SGLT2 companies went to the FDA years ago, Jeremy and I were both there, sotagliflozin. It never got approved. It was a 50-50 tie on the vote. But if the data on kidney and heart disease was available then, I'm sure that drug would have been approved. And I bet you in the future they do get approved.
Yeah, I think, to put it as practical as possible. So what we're saying is that there's roles for these drugs in type 1s potentially. So if you're just killing it, your blood sugars are, your time in range is above 70%, you don't have any other complications, your weight is, kind of where you want it, I wouldn't give a second thought to these medications. If you have any kind of kidney or heart disease along with your diabetes, then absolutely being on one of these SGLT2 pills is appropriate. And then I would say if you're struggling with weight, especially if you have an official indication of obesity, where your BMI, and you can do this online, is just figure out what your BMI is. It's really just your height and weight. If that's over 30, and then you are technically obese, and a lot of type 1s, the majority of type 1s actually are either overweight or obese.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. If you have officially have obesity, there are some of these medications now that are approved specifically for obesity. So there could be a role of using these GLP-1s there. So in kind of all comers with type 1, no, I wouldn't worry about this, but in certain populations for sure.
And I think, if you want to have a discussion with your doctor or your provider, like if you come to them and say, I have some kidney disease or I have some heart disease, this is why I'm interested in this medications, that may help them to understand this, because this is a little bit of a new way of thinking, but I think it's the right way. It's not as much just about what they do for your blood sugars. It's these really important other benefits.
Yeah.
So and there are, to answer the kind of the first question, or just to circle back on it, there are reasons why these aren't approved, and there are some reasons why providers may be scared, to start them. Things like an increased risk of diabetic ketoacidosis, especially with the SGLT2 inhibitors. It's a small increased risk, but it's there. So it's just important to be aware that, there are some risks, but the benefits are very real. And so it's balancing those out and then having that discussion with your doctor saying, hey, I understand there's some risk, but here's the benefits. I have heart disease or I have kidney disease. Like, I'm missing out on this. And this is why these may be beneficial for you.
We should talk a little bit more about the what we call euglycemic DKA, because I think that's important. That does scare off a lot of doctors.
Well, and there is a question in here asking, not related to the SGLT2s, but is there a blood sugar cutoff for DKA? So I think it's really important to talk about that. Maybe, Steve, you could address that with and without an SGLT2 inhibitor.
Yeah, I'll just start off that, most of the time we relate to having DKA with, feeling horrible, blood sugars through the roof, you didn't get your insulin pump came out, or when you were first diagnosed. But there is a thing called euglycemic DKA where your blood sugar is below 250. And diabetic ketoacidosis can occur no matter what your blood sugar is. That's an important point, and people are surprised to hear that. With the SGLT2 inhibitors, I can't say it as fast as you can, Jeremy, that the way they work, as you mentioned, Tricia, you pee out glucose, and it has so your glucose may not be that high, but you're going to feel achy, you're going to feel like you got the flu, and you're going to feel just horrible, dry mouth, totally different than just having a high blood sugar after eating an acai bowl, because there you don't really feel that different. And there are certain things that you could do at home. It just takes education. We all know about insulin, drinking fluids like water, but the other thing that people don't talk about that works extremely well and is often forgotten is you should take carbs. And people say, why? Why would you take carbs when you're in ketoacidosis? Well, carbs and insulin, it turns off the brain's drive. You had that want to be a millionaire question. It turns off the brain's drive to produce ketone bodies. That's looking for some type of energy because there's not enough insulin around. It might be too complicated to spew off like that, but maybe one of you guys jump in.
Well, I would just say the bottom line is that there is an increased risk of DKA if you're on these SGLT2s, and you have to be educated about. There are ketone meters that you can just do like a blood test to know what your ketone levels are. So that's why they aren't approved for type 1s. But when we were discussing should they be approved or not for type 1s, we didn't know about all the extra benefits of heart and kidney, benefits, etc. So now that we know that these are super beneficial, they delay the progression of kidney disease, heart disease, etc., it becomes more of a risk and balance. And I think we will eventually start using them more and more in type 1s. And by the way, there's a lot of work going on, particularly Abbott's leading the way with a dual continuous glucose meter, continuous ketone meter, where you'll obviously have your glucose readings, but then maybe only when your ketones get to a dangerous level, it might alert you. I mean, you don't need to be staring at your ketone level all the time, but it would be nice to know if you ever got into trouble with something that you're already wearing.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say just in summary is that DKA, even though it's serious, and that's why we talk about it and we spend a lot of time on it, it's actually very rare with these medications. So it's important to keep that in mind. And like you said, Jeremy, I think we don't want to scare you off with them because the benefits now are so much, outweigh the risks so much, I think. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is there's some things, if you take these medications, that you can do that really decrease your risk of DKA with SGLT2s. So that is, not taking that pill on days when you're not eating, for example, like if you're sick or if you have a colonoscopy tomorrow or something like that, you do want to hold the medication during that time. And then not taking it if you're someone who frequently misses your insulin doses, then that will actually increase your risk of DKA with this as well. So those are just some things to think about if you are going to take these medications.
Yeah, besides being rare, I just want to emphasize again that DKA is treatable, but it really comes down to recognizing it early. And it could throw you off a little bit if your blood sugar isn't sky high.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's
having,
what's scary about the euglycemic DKA. If you're
Yeah.
looking for a high blood sugar, but you're in DKA, you're going to miss it, and you're going to get pretty sick and end up in the hospital.
yeah, and you get to the point where you can't hold anything down, you just got to go to the ER. I had a question for you guys. Do you recommend the urine dipstick for ketones? I know it doesn't measure the right type of ketones, but to me, they're so much more accessible and easy to have around than a ketone meter.
And less expensive.
And less
for
expensive.
A lot of people.
I like the meter because, the meter itself's not
Where's
that-
yours?
Well, I don't have one, but actually I do. I have lots at work. But the meters aren't that expensive. The ketone strips are extremely expensive, but you only need to have 5 of them around, because it's not like you're checking every day. It's just if my blood sugar's high, I'm achy, let me see what my ketones
Yeah.
are. But yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to change directions here a little bit. There's some questions on cholesterol. So one of them says, and I love this question because a lot of patients ask it, why is a statin important if my cholesterol and blood pressure are low? And then another question is, my cholesterol is high, but I can't take statins. What can I do?
Well, okay, so I'll start with the first one. So why a statin even if you're... So a statin has nothing to do with your blood pressure, but if your blood pressure is well controlled, that's a good place to start. There used to be all these different cutoffs for cholesterol levels. And I think the most important one is the LDL. That's that bad cholesterol. That's one that we really want to lower. We know that lower is better for LDL. So when you say, hey, my LDL is low or it's good or whatever that is, it probably could be better is one answer, because as we decrease that LDL from super high, let's say 200, that's going to be very dangerous. We get it down below 100, that's a much better place. Less than 70 is even better. So as we get lower and lower, it's better. It's going to reduce your chance of having a heart attack and a stroke. So the statins will do that. So wherever you start at, taking a statin will still reduce your chance of having heart disease and heart attacks. And even outside of the actual LDL number, there's benefits from statins, so they're anti-inflammatory. So they play a role that helps protect the heart even beyond what the LDL or the cholesterol number is.
And I think that's so important because a lot of people are really honing in on that number. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, statins should be in the water. I mean, they are just so good at reducing our risk of dying from heart attacks.
Yeah, I think, everybody here has type 1 diabetes, or, that's what we're talking about. And us with type 1 are at higher risk of cardiovascular disease. It's the most likely reason that anybody on this planet will die. And people with type 1 are at higher risk. And therefore, if you have type 1, you're over 40 years old, you should be on a statin or some kind of cholesterol-lowering drug, regardless of what your LDL is. And people get hung up, well, I eat healthy, I kind of beat themselves up, I can do it without a statin. For me, it's so easy to take these, once a day pills. The side effects, I think, have been really blown out of proportion. So start with a statin, which goes to the second question, though. What if I actually cannot take a statin? I have muscle aches or some kind of, whatever it might be. There's so many medications now that you can try, beyond a statin, that are very efficacious. So talking to your doctor, there's some other oral drugs, there's some that are actually injections where you can take, twice a month, for example. But you just need to be addressing this. Because I always say that, patients come in, we spend the whole visit talking about, I went high this day, then I went low, and infusion sets and whatever, and we don't address blood pressure or cholesterol, which are much easier to fix. So again, if you're over, 40, thinking about being on a statin, making sure your blood pressure is at, its goals, ideally, at least less than 140 over 90, if not 130 over 80. So making sure you talk about those two things at every visit. What's my blood pressure goal? Should I be on something for cholesterol? And of course, all the blood sugar stuff.
And Jeremy commonly says, you cannot have a heart attack if you're dead. So, he commonly goes to that line. You're
Yeah.
just flat.
All right, I think we have to wrap up, unfortunately. I know there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to. Are these questions still going to be answered after the conference? Do you know, Steve?
We are going to do our best, but I would say that the best way to get your questions answered, go to our video vault. We have over 250 lectures on all the topics.
Yeah,
and we
so
talk
true.
about these topics in detail. So,
And we're going to put Steve's cell phone number in the chat too.
yeah,
just in
but
case.
I'm gonna be dead, so I won't be able to answer any. Sorry.
My blood sugar went high just now because we actually did order more Chinese food. So we've been snacking on some more Panda Express
We ordered
today.
Panda Express because when we watched the video,
Yeah,
we just got starving.
Did you finish digesting the first one yet? I feel like-
Oh my God.
All right,
anyways.
any closing comments?
No, thanks everybody. I think we got to go on. But no, I guess, do we have time for closing
Jeremy,
comments?
Eric, do we have 4 more minutes?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, my closing comments.
Yeah, we got
Thank
time.
you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you guys for watching. I will make a pitch to please go to donate. Even if anybody just gives $5, $10, that makes a huge difference. So you can click on the different things throughout the VForm or VFairs platform. You can go to tcoyd.org/donate. Because it really does make a difference, and it helps us, continue to do this programming and offer it for free to everybody around the world.
Thank you. And I should say that we've had people from over 100 different companies.
Countries.
Companies too. Yeah, thank you. 100 different countries. And it's so nice for people to be able to watch all our material that we do, that we put in our video vault, that they can watch anytime they want. We don't charge anything for it. We want to make it accessible to everybody. And we also found that from many of the evaluations that we collect from you folks is that about 20% of the people watching are watching with a loved one, which is really music to my ears and my heart, because I love the fact that people are learning together. We should mention about next year one.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
next year's one, which we have a date for, which I think is in August, is going to be live in person here in San Diego at the Paradise Point Resort, and it's a Friday to Sunday deal. I'm super excited about it because we've done a couple of those live. They're just a blast. And because you guys have, stayed and watched the whole day, you guys really have the first opportunity to register for that, because I think the registration's open now.
The registration opens today, and the last couple ones we've had, they totally filled up. It is a special event. Virtual is awesome. We're able to reach people anywhere, anytime, but being there with other of your peers with type 1, it is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every year we say the same thing. We're just blown away.
It's just it's an emotional experience. I think that even though you guys do such a great job connecting with the audience, I think there's just another level when you're in person together.
Yeah, the in-person one events are my favorite, even though I don't have type 1, but they still let us go. And it's just so cool. And I just love to be there and just soak in the energy and just to see people sharing tips and tricks and making, diabetes friends, buddies, and it's really neat. So I'm excited.
It's not a cheesy thing for us to say this will sell out, so we don't want you to be left out. If you have any consideration, register as soon as possible.
And we did negotiate with the Paradise Point Hotel to make the hotel rooms less expensive. But we only have a certain block. But anyway, we want to give you guys the first opportunity to be there.
And now we're going to do an encore performance, right, Eric, of our song?
Go to the last session, yeah.
Oh, so go to the last session, close out of this, go to the last thing. And thanks, everybody, again. Thanks, Trish, Schaefer, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much.
See you later.